Welcome to F1 Coffee Corner, Full Beans. I'm your host as always, Terry, and I'm here to keep you up to date with all of the unbiased, hard-hitting Formula 1 news. So grab your favourite mug of coffee, sit down, strap in and get yourself comfortable to join in the conversation. Because this is F1 Coffee Corner. This is Full Beans, the must-have podcast for all Formula 1 fans. Welcome to this week's episode of F1 Coffee Corner, Full Beans the podcast. I'm your host, as always, Terry, and this week I'm going to be taking you through all the latest from the Formula 1 paddock in the Espresso news. We're going to be taking a look back at last weekend's Grand Prix in Italy, of course the Imola Grand Prix in the coffee chat, and then in the takeaway section we're going to be looking ahead to this weekend's Grand Prix, which is of course in Monaco, and what can we expect from that one. So, now the agenda is set, now that we know what we're getting ourselves into over the next 35 minutes or so, this is Full Beans. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, so you'll be notified when the latest episode drops. And yeah, grab your coffee, sit down, strap in, let's give it some Full Beans. Right then, Espresso news. Now, the top story that's dominating the Formula 1 headlines was released yesterday afternoon, and that is, of course, Andretti making the signing of Pat Symonds. Now, Pat Symonds was the Chief Technical Officer at Formula 1 Management, so at FOM, and he was responsible for basically making not only the regulations that we're currently in, but also the new ones that are coming up in 2026. So this is a massive coup for Andretti. So his contract was with Formula 1 Management. He was obviously working alongside the FIA in terms of their technical team so that the rules and regulations can be written. This is how they do it. But yeah, he's been placed on garden leave as of immediate effect, and he will then join Andretti. Now, we've not been told how long that garden leave is at all. Just so this is a deal that's happened. It came out yesterday afternoon. And this is huge because Andretti now hold the man who's responsible almost single-handedly, or certainly heading up the team that's responsible for writing the 2026 regulations. Now, he can't start work earlier than the other teams, so there is no sort of time advantage with this. However, there's a massive advantage in the sense of they've now secured the one person who knows exactly what's in those rules. So at the moment, the teams are not sure. They've got a good idea. The rules come out from the FIA. I think they're about another couple of months away, and then they'll be communicated to the team. So the teams will know before Pat Symonds takes up his role with Andretti. However, Andretti not only know what's in the 2026 regulations because they've got the person who wrote them, who I'm sure would have looked at all of the loopholes alongside the FIA technical regulation team as well. So we'll know exactly what can and can't go into this car development. But also we know that Formula 1 Management have already started work on the 2030 regulations, which Pat Symonds was also a part of. So Andretti, even if they can't join until 2028, may well have a foot in the door with regards to what Formula 1 Management and the FIA are going to propose in 2030. So another set of regulations ahead of the ones that are coming, which is just massive. Huge. Yeah, Pat Symonds has got massive experience within the Formula 1 paddock, worked with loads of teams up and down the grid, widely respected, massive figure within the Formula 1 paddock, going to Andretti. What does it mean for Andretti? Andretti are full steam ahead, aren't they? They're desperate to get into Formula 1. I'm not sure if getting the person off Formula 1 Management who wrote the regulations is the way to get Formula 1 Management to let you into Formula 1. It could get a bit messy, depending on how that relationship broke down with Pat Symonds and Formula 1 Management. But one thing is for sure, with Formula 1 Management quoting one of the reasons as the Andretti car is not competitive and will not be able to be coming in at a decent level, that's going to be a lot harder when you've got the person single-handedly responsible for writing the regulations, heading up that team. That's not going to carry any sway. And if that was the only reason why Andretti weren't allowed to come into Formula 1, they may have just boxed that one off with one very, very clever move by recruiting him. What does it all mean? We don't know. I mean, the teams themselves are not going to be happy about it, but I don't think Andretti really care about that. The FIA, I'm not sure they're going to want to get involved in this. They don't normally want to get involved in Formula 1 Management politics with the teams, especially when they've done nothing wrong, and it's not in their interest to get involved. So I'm expecting them to complete a complete wide berth and sort of skirt over this one and disappear into the sunset. But yeah, Pat Symonds joining Andretti, massive move for Andretti, massive statement of intent from Andretti. And with their poaching and staff from the likes of Alpine coming to Andretti now that we're hearing, surely now Andretti either know something or are preparing for something to get them into Formula One, because I don't believe that they're going to be doing all of this work for a 2028 car, that's for sure. But one to keep an eye on, that's for sure. But it's going to be busy down at Silverstone, isn't it? Let's check what else we had on here. Ferrari looking set to retain its historic bonus payment in the next Concord agreement, but the amount is now going to be capped. For those who don't know, Ferrari being the only constructors who's been in Formula One since the very first championship, they receive one of the historic bonuses. It's traditionally a top-up bonus alongside their veto. We know that in the past, the power of the veto has been diluted, so it looks like they're now trying to do the same with the historic payment. However, knowing Ferrari, they've played hardball for this, and they're still going to get a substantial amount. But either way, it doesn't kind of surprise me one bit. Formula One management don't want to fall out with the teams over the Concord agreement, so keeping this in. And a lot of teams have kind of come to accept that it's in there. So I think the fact they've capped it is appeasing the teams, as well as making sure that Ferrari don't throw their toys out the pram and threaten to leave the sport, which we've had in the past. We've got Toto Wolff has dismissed Christian Horner's claims that Red Bull Powertrains has taken over 200 staff members, saying that reality is about 1/10 of that. This is, of course, on the back of the Miami Grand Prix a couple of Grand Prix ago, where I think Zach Brown kicked it all off, saying that Adrian wasn't going to be first to leave and loads of CVs are coming across his desk, which prompted Christian to say that he's also nicked a load of staff off Toto. Toto's now come out and say, well, actually, it's not as many as you think it is. It's kind of tit for tat. We know that Mercedes, they've lost their chief aero guy, and that's the other bit of news that we haven't covered. So their chief aero guys quit. We know that with the cost cap era, the teams have to let staff go to make room for new staff. So it's not always a negative. I'd certainly say with Mercedes, they need to change direction. So letting the person in charge of your aerodynamics go probably isn't the worst move that you made in recent history when you look at the performance of certainly the W15 and what happened with the W13, W14. So I think it's just common business in the cost cap era to bring someone in, especially in a high profile position, you've got to let someone go. So we're getting a lot more of this turnover. We're getting a lot more of actually staff moving between other teams, whereas in the past, teams like Mercedes would have given big contracts, long-term contracts, and locked all of these people in because there was no cost cap involved. So it's just unfortunately the downside of the cost cap era. Zach Brown's stirring the pot, saying that he doesn't think that Max will win the championship in any other car than the Red Bull, and says that he feels that 6 or 7 drivers would be champion in the Red Bull. Zach, I'm not sure that that's correct. I mean, yes, the Red Bull is a pretty damn good car, even if it's not as dominant in terms of the RB20 as the RB19 was. It's dominance at the hands of Max Verstappen. That's the difference. It's not dominant at the hands of Checo, and I don't for 1 minute believe they've got different cars, so therefore it then comes down to the driver ability. And I'm sure if Max Verstappen was in the McLaren that's performing as it currently is, which we'll come on to in a minute when we do a review of Imola, I'm sure that Max would be getting better results than what Lando and Oscar are getting. I'm pretty damn sure of that. So, yeah, not sure I agree fully with that one, Zach, but I do understand where he's coming from in terms of the car. But as I've always said, you need a combination of both. You need a car and a driver working in perfect harmony. That is what Red Bull have got, and that's what makes them so tough to beat. I'm not going to touch on the race review of Imola or any comments around that because we're obviously going to cover that in the coffee chat. Christian saying he's got no comments about Max competing in sim racing alongside the main Grand Prix, calling him a race machine. This is, of course, on the back of last weekend when Max wasn't in the cockpit of the RB20. He was in the cockpit of his sim doing his part for Team Redline and the 24-hour Nürburgring track, I believe it was, the virtual track there. This goes back to be the same as what used to happen with Lewis Hamilton and fashion praise and things like that. So there used to be a lot of criticism aimed at Lewis when on a race week he would dive into Milan or wherever to do a fashion show and then go to the racetrack. Received a lot of criticism for that. I think that Max is adopting the exact same philosophy. As long as it doesn't affect my on-track performance, does it really matter? That's what he does to de-stress. That's what he does to unwind. And actually, is there any problem with that? The answer is quite clearly no. We've got Thailand Prime Minister attended Imola. He was in Italy anyway, having talks about trade, and popped into the Imola Grand Prix to hold talks about, I think it is Bangkok hosting the Formula One race, so a street circuit in their country. Another Asia Grand Prix in the sense of they want to expand in that area. It's an area that Formula One have got an interest in. Stefano Domenicali said it's not going to be in addition in terms of the amount of races, 24 races. it's going to come at the expense of a race. Tracks like Imola are at risk. And I would not be surprised one bit to see it swapped over for something like this at all. Obviously, they're trying to get Red Bull on board in terms of the tie backing. I've not seen whether or not that's actually happened so far. I know that there's been talk of trying to get them to pump some money in, sponsor it, whatever it is they want them to do, publicise it, gather support. But I've not seen anything officially from Red Bull to say that they are supporting it. But that's the theory behind trying to get Red Bull involved anyway, to boost it up a bit. Aston Martin boss Mike Crack says the updates introduced to the AMR24 in Imola may have made the car more difficult to drive. I think Fernando would agree with you, Mike. He certainly struggled, which we'll come on to in a bit. And then we've got... I'm trying to see which ones weren't the race ones. Christian Horner says the team did a really good job overnight with Seb Burami, Jake Dennis and everyone in Milton Keynes working into early hours on the sim. That was with regards to Red Bull's setup. I did the podcast with Adam and with Rob in terms of the deadline stream. That's going to be back this weekend as well for Monaco, so make sure you tune into that one over on the FanAmp YouTube channel. Keep it on my social medias for the link and the exact time for that one. But yeah, a lot of people calling for the change to Max. I made a very passionate plea to stick with Max because I believed he would get it right, and evidently it came good. So make sure you tune in for that one to get all of the latest on what's happening with the drivers and the cars, right up to the point where you have to lock in your fancy Formula 1 team. It's turned into a really good show, really good interaction from the people who've been in the live stream and been in the comments while the show's been recorded live, asking lots and lots of questions about lineups, drivers. Last week we had Fernando, whether or not his car will be ready. So really appreciate the interaction that everyone's given us on that one. So check that one out if you get a chance. And I think that's pretty much it for the Coffee Corner news and the Espresso news. I don't think there's too much more to cover in terms of what's happening in Formula 1. Adrian Newey to Ferrari, let's just touch on that one. Now, that rumour has been going around the paddock, but it's not come from anyone apart from, it's the Daily Mail, so it's one source, and that's been it. I tend to take this with a pinch of salt. That's why I've not really done a video or a report on it, because I haven't seen anything that makes me think that. And in fact, Eddie Jordan they come out and said it's rubbish that he signed, so they have it. I seem to have been proven right with my gut theory on that one, that there's been nothing secure for Adrian. I believe what has been said by Eddie Jordan today, where he came out and said that, Adrian's got 3 or 4 options, he's looking at all of them before he decides what to do. That kind of feels where we're at with Adrian. Lots of options on the table, weighing each one up, including potentially retirement, and then he's going to come back with whichever one floats his boat. If not, sailing his boat is what he decides to do. So, yeah, that's the bit on Adrian Newey. I'm just trying to think. There was another one there which I just thought of, and it's completely gone. No, it'll come back to me later on. But that is it for the Espresso news. So with that in mind, let's get the results up for Imola, and let's dive back into the Italian Grand Prix, Imola Grand Prix, because the Italian Grand Prix is technically Monza. I am not going to pronounce that massive name that everyone's been doing TikToks and videos about, because I'll be here all day and I'll get it horribly wrong. So let's look back at Imola last weekend. Right, let's take it from the top. Let's get comfy. P1 Max Verstappen. So Max Verstappen, not the easiest of races. A lot of talk about whether or not Lando, after finishing 0.725 behind him in second place, could have caught up with Max. I struggle with this one because it's one thing catching up with Max, it's another thing getting past him. I'm not sure even with a couple of extra laps, Lando would have had enough to get past Max. He was right on the limit, right at the end of the Grand Prix, making a couple of mistakes because he was pushing so hard. Can't blame him for that one bit. By the way, it's not a criticism of Lando. I thought he drove brilliantly and was a worthy winner of driver of the day, that's for sure, and certainly put Max under pressure. The one thing I will say is, though, Max under pressure with so many laps left, no track limits left because he'd already gone over, and the next one would have given him a 5-second penalty. Drove, absolutely imperiously. Not a footstep wrong. Conserved the battery when he had to, deployed it when he had to, made sure that he hit every corner, made sure that Lando could not get that DRS on him and could not get that jump on him in terms of, catching and passing. So whilst I, appreciate the job that Lando did in second place in terms of closing that gap all the way down and making for what was ultimately a thrilling end to a pretty boring race before that, let's be honest about it. But, Lando did a great job, but I'm still not convinced he would have had enough to get past Max. But I think it would have been closer with a few extra laps. But ultimately, you drive the laps you're given, the distance you're given, and Max won. deserving winner. Like I said, Red Bull made a load of setup changes. Sim drivers worked absolute overtime to get that right. Engineers worked overtime. They stopped doing their pit stop practice that they normally do. They concentrated on the car. And as what we've seen from Red Bull over the past couple of years, when it matters most, they dig deep and they deliver. And that's what they did in Imola last weekend. Charles Leclerc, third place. Schumacher, last time a Ferrari driver was on the podium at Imola, so long overdue. And, Charles Leclerc drove a solid race. Didn't really look like he was ever going to challenge the top two, but again, was in it at a point where he was controlling, driving well. The updates on that Ferrari makes that SF24 look like it's got enough going forward to be a competitive car. Once they start understanding it a bit more, the advantages that McLaren had by running their update in Miami, ready for Imola, that they've got a bigger understanding of it. So I'm expecting Ferrari to come back a bit stronger. Monaco isn't the track for that. We're coming on to that one in the takeaway part. Oscar Piastri in fourth place, really hampered by his performance in qualifying in terms of blocking Kevin Magnussen and getting that grid penalty. I think without that, he could have been certainly challenging for the podium and maybe even challenging Lando and Max for the race win. But either way, really good drive by Oscar Piastri, a really solid performance from him after a disappointing qualifying penalty. But good to see the updates on that McLaren working well for both drivers. And he's someone who could be a dark horse around Monaco, I feel. That's for sure. Carlos Sainz in fifth place, and I've just remembered what that bit of news was in the first section, and that is McLaren are, of course, running their Senna livery in Monaco. People like me were expecting the red and white because they teased it a bit. I suppose too much of a nod to Marlborough. I've seen the video where they said it was because they felt that Ayrton's helmet colours were more significant because they're the ones he chose. I get that. I think that, when you think about who McLaren's current sponsors are, a nod to Marlborough probably wouldn't have gone down well. So I can also see why they've done the job they've done and gone for the helmet design. However, that's not to take away, it's a pretty damn good design. And there is some pretty damn good, Monaco merch, Senna merch coming out for McLaren, which I've just ordered a polo shirt for. So get yourselves on it. It's out now. Carlos Sainz, fifth place. Again, a race where he didn't really challenge anybody. He was kind of there, picking up points. Another solid performance from him in terms of point scoring. A driver very much who needs to decide what to do with his future. Then we've got the two Mercedes. We've got Hamilton in sixth place, George in seventh place. Bit of controversy over the fact they pitted George, sent him back out. He obviously couldn't get past Lewis. In fact, he wasn't really close to Lewis after his second pit stop. You lose about 27 seconds for a pit stop at Imola, so it was always going to make it difficult. Mercedes are saying that it's because they saw degradation on his car and wanted to make sure that his tyres were fine. George clearly wasn't happy about this. He wanted to have the place back from Lewis because he says that if it hadn't been for a difference in strategy, that's what would have happened. What I would say is it's happened in the reverse order plenty of times, but ultimately it doesn't affect the Constructors' Championship, which one of them finished sixth and which one finishes seventh, which I'm pretty sure is what Mercedes have gone off in the end. We've got Checo down in eighth place, started on the hard tyres, tried to go long in the hope of a safety car, which had people were quoted 100%. I prefer to leave it at just over 90% because you can never have a certainty for a safety car. It wasn't 100% because we didn't get one, so I'll stick with my 90%. Thank you, people who do the stats in Formula 1. But Checo qualified poorly, came back through the pack, picked up some points. We'll need to do better. We tend to see Checo sort of fall off a bit, so I think everyone, including Red Bull, are hoping that this isn't the case with everyone else closing the gap in the Constructors' Championship. They need Checo to be performing a bit harder than that. And I think with that carrot being dangled of that new contract, that's exactly what Red Bull are going to try and do. We've got Lance Stroll, ninth place. Absolutely underrated drive from Lance Stroll this weekend. Didn't get a lot of screen time, didn't get a lot of talk from the commentators. But I thought that, Lance Stroll drove a pretty solid race. He ninth place, finished much higher than Fernando, picking up some much needed points for Aston Martin. They'll be glad of that one. Yuki Tsunoda continuing that fantastic form in 10th place, picking up a point, outperforming his teammate, probably outperforming the Visa Cash App RB at the moment, if I'm being honest. Really mature driving from Yuki this season, really stamping his claim for a seat somewhere, possibly outside the Red Bull stable we're hearing now. I still think that he's going to be part of the Honda deal that goes to Aston Martin. I've heard Haas being floated about, but I don't believe that. I think that that's his team just trying to negotiate a bit more with Aston Martin for 2026 or with Honda with Red Bull, to extend. So that's my thinking on that one. Then we've got the Haas guys of Hulkenberg and Magnussen in 11th and 12th. Be disappointed to miss out on the points, considering where they've been recently, but some good solid driving from both of those. And I think Kevin Magnussen will be happy that he only saw the stewards for Oscar blocking him and nothing else. 2 points left on his licence before he gets a ban. I'm sure he'll be glad that this weekend's gone through a bit more smoother. Daniel Ricciardo, 13th place. You would say that's not too bad, but with Yuki all the way up in 10th place, you would say that actually Daniel's still lagging behind and probably needs to do better on that one. Esteban Ocon, 14th place, really good performance from Alpine, moving back up through the pack a bit more, starting to get the updates on that car, starting to move forward. We know that David Sanchez is now fully on board. He's in the garage, he's developing the car, so that can only be good news for Alpine fans. We then got Joe in 15th place, Gasly in 16th place, not too much to talk about on those. We've got Logan Sargent in 17th place. Not a bad performance from Logan Sargent in terms of he's outperformed his teammate under a lot of pressure. James Vowell said last week that for the first time ever that Logan's seat may be in threat. That's the first time James has very openly talked about that. I'm not led to believe it's an imminent threat, but it is a threat, that's for sure. Then you got Valtteri Bottas in 18th and Fernando Alonso at the back of the pack in 19th. Fernando obviously having that smash in FP3, needed his car rebuilt for qualifying, made a lot of changes to that car, put new engine, new gearbox in as a precaution. Not sure if they went back to the older setup or whether or not they're using new parts, but either way, Fernando clearly struggling with that Aston Martin and will just be happy to get out this weekend. Then, of course, the only DNF was Alex Albon after that pit stop mistake where that nut wasn't quite on and then he came back in and then the pace sort of disappeared, so he did a few laps after that. So yeah, Alex Albon, the only retiree from the Imola Grand Prix. In terms of Imola itself, it's a track which is great from a history point of view. We obviously saw Seb's great tribute to Ayrton Senna driving the McLaren and the run that he did. So really good to see Seb. He looks really well. Always could see him back on track and back in the paddock. But return to Formula One clearly isn't happening from what he said. And in terms of Formula One themselves, they had the tributes. I would have liked to have seen a bit more emphasis on Roland's accent as well. It seemed to be very Senna orientated, which I know Senna was the star, but equally we lost both of them and all eyes are definitely equal. So from that point of view, I probably would have seen a lot more about Roland being celebrated. Really lovely touch from the trophies in terms of having a helmet, both of them on, in terms of a dedication to the two drivers who lost their lives at Imola 30 years ago now. So, that's it for the race review in Imola. In terms of fastest lap, I believe George Russell had the fastest lap with a 1:18.589. And in terms of pit stops, Red Bull had the fastest 2.09, which I believe was on Checo's car, if my memory serves me correct. So that is the end of your Coffee Corner race review. So shall we get on to the final part, the takeaway? Let's give it a go, shall we? We are heading to, of course, Monaco. Monaco is the jewel in Formula One's crown. Now, it gets a lot of criticism. I'm not going to deny that. It's not a track that's great for on-track action at all, but it's Monaco. It's full of yachts. It's full of real sea in terms of the boats in the harbour, real water rather than what we see in Miami, and it still remains a jewel in Formula One's crown despite the on-track action, which normally only comes any good if the weather is dodgy, which I'm not too sure how much it is. We have got some dodgy weather due in for the weekend, but I'm not sure how much of it's going to affect the race and the run itself. But anyway, let's have a look at Monaco. So an exception to the rule in the sense of the laps and the race distance. So a track length of 3.337 kilometres, 78 laps around here. First Grand Prix all the way back in 1950. A race distance of 260.286 kilometres. So a shorter race distance. This is to allow it to fall within the time limits that it has. If it went the normal 309 or 306 kilometres, it would be a lot longer, and they don't want to do that. A lap record in 2021 by Lewis Hamilton of 1 minute 12.909. In terms of tyres, Pirelli have matched their tyre allocation from Imola and brought with them the C3, the C4 and the C5 compound tyres. The softest tyres available in Pirelli's range. We know that there's going to be demand on tyres. We know it's going to be demand on the car. In terms of the updates, we won't see too many updates coming to Monaco. What we're going to be seeing is a lot of teams bringing updates that are circuit specific, that deals with those, long hairpins, those slow corners, that steering lock that is almost doubled over, which Formula One cars don't like doing. All of those things, that's what the updates, I believe, this week are going to be more towards, rather than actual updating the car for performance. Where do I think that's going to play out? Ultimately, qualifying is key around Monaco. Whoever's got pole position is going to be in for a massive chance of winning the race, especially if they can keep their nose clean going through turn one and then keep it in their minds when they do their pit stops. And if they get the strategy right, you can pretty much lead from start to finish here. So that's what I'm expecting. But let's have a look at the book. So, as always, we've got the Formula One 2024 book, Wildbet Publishing, Bruce Jones. And let's see what it says about Monaco. The streets of Monte Carlo have changed enormously since the 1950s, but there is a magic that Formula One would indeed be foolish to lose. Certainly, space is limited for the team's requirements, but the upside is that this is the one race that people outside the world of Formula One know about. Monaco is glamorous, with the super yachts packing out the harbour and the castle and grand buildings draped over the hills that rise from there. The circuit is never less than cramped, though. Even the start-finish straight isn't really straight, but it's the way that the circuit has to thread its way through the streets and around the buildings that give it its distinctive nature. The first corner is a hard right entered via a kink, then it's sharply uphill on the riding road to Massenet, where the track turns hard left. Casino Square follows, with the drivers skirting the park and driving down to Mirabeau. A sharp right into which the occasional passing move used to be attempted when the cars, of course, were much smaller. The slope continues down to the Grand Hotel hairpin and keeps falling through two rights to hit the level again before the drivers charge into the brightly lit tunnel beneath the hotel. The fastest point comes on the slope down the tunnel exit to the Nouveau chicane, with the fastest cars hitting 180 miles an hour, which is 290 kilometers per hour, before the drivers brake heavily and drop down 2-second gear for the left-right left flick. Blast along the harbour front is now a quick flick through to back and a dazzling double essay around the swimming pool before two more rights and back onto the start-finish straight. So like I said, the pole time last year was Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, 1 minute 11.365. The winner's average speed was 89.184 miles per hour. Gives an idea of how slow they go around here. As I've said, Lewis Hamilton had the lap record with 1 minute 12.909, which was set in 2021. Last year, Lewis Hamilton also had the fastest lap at 1 minute 15.650. You'll remember this is when Mercedes brought that much awaited update package that saw side pods finally introduced to the W14. This was the introduction of what was then known as the W14B at that point. So yeah, previous winners, we've got Nico Rosberg in 2013, 2014, 2015. We've got Lewis Hamilton 2016, Seb Vettel 2017, Daniel Ricciardo 2018, Lewis Hamilton 2019, Max Verstappen 2021, Sergio Perez 2022, and then Max Verstappen again in 2023. So you can see a wide range of winners, showing that the key around here is clearly qualifying. Get qualifying right, you'll win a really good chance to winning this Grand Prix, that's for sure. And I'm pretty sure that's all I've got. Let's just touch on last weekend. So last weekend, I went to the F1 arcade down in London. So this was courtesy of Silverstone Racing Club. Now, for those who don't know, Silverstone have an annual membership, which when you sign up to, you get discounts. You get notified of things early. You get events that you can go to, such as this one. And you also get early access to your Formula One tickets for the British Grand Prix before the massive pricing system that kicks in. I've completely forgot what the name is there on that one. Dynamic pricing, there we go. Before the dynamic pricing kicks in. So, yeah, that's normally the main reason why people get the Silverstone Racing Club membership, to be honest, because it allows you early access, and ultimately what you pay in membership for the year, you could probably save in ticket prices. So it does pay for itself. We've had it for the first time this year. We were lucky enough to be invited down to the F1 arcade, where we met the fantastic McLaren Baggy. So huge shout out to him for my Roland Ratzenberger Ayrton Senna tribute flag. for recording me on the Sims there, and for just genuinely being a nice guy. We spoken loads on WhatsApp, and we spoken loads, via sort of comments on videos and stuff. So it was amazing to finally meet McLaren Baggy in person. He's on his way to Monaco as I record his podcast, so hopefully it rains on him because he didn't invite us. But on a serious note, I hope you have an amazing time, my man, because his company was great. Went down with Dad. That was amazing. Missed Formula One events with Dad, who's been working away. Huge thank you to the interaction on the video to get Dad's boss to let him out of work for Nigel Mansell. It didn't happen, unfortunately. Dad didn't see Nigel, which I'm sure he's gutted about. I know I am. So Nigel Mansell was last night, as we were recording this on Wednesday, which we'll come on to in a minute. But yeah, Silverstone Racing Club, fantastic event down at the F1 Arcade. We went in there, went into the briefing room, which is a private room at the back. And literally there was food, there was beer, there was Ferrari champagne. Probably the only time I'm ever going to taste Ferrari champagne, let's be honest about it. We went down on the train, had a great time, went on the Sims, watched the Grand Prix. And what struck me as interesting is people talking about how they found Imola boring. Now, the Grand Prix itself had a distinct lack of action until the end of the Grand Prix. But the atmosphere watching it was really good, which got me thinking that sometimes it's not always the race. It's when Formula One is in a social environment, sometimes it's about watching it with that crowd of like-minded fans and actually meeting some people. I met a lovely couple who had flown over from Ireland who recognised me, which huge shout out to those two. For one, flying over from Ireland to go to the F1 Arcade, and two, for coming and saying hi. Still strikes me as strange when I get stopped at these things, but if you ever see me out and about, please feel free to stop, say hi. I appreciate every single person who listens and watches and interacts, and genuinely, you're certainly not intruding on any of my time. So if you see me out and about, please say hi. I always love chatting Formula One. Let's be honest about it. Hence why I'm here doing a podcast about it. But yeah, that was a great event. Hit the train on the way back. Really good. Sim racing. Got some freebies as well. I mean, Silverstone Racing Club went all out. Not only do we all have all of this food, food was fantastic. F1 Arcade was brilliant. We had pizza. We had like ham. There was all sorts of stuff coming out. Cheese, all sorts being brought out, and it just kept coming as well. It was, there was loads of food. But great service down there as well. The staff at the F1 Arcade were amazing, really helpful. Like I say, first time we've been to the one in London, but really impressed with it. I like the one in Birmingham because it's close by. It's not too far for me, but likewise, the one in London was pretty good and pretty special. So if you get a chance, definitely check out the F1 Arcade for a watch party. But yeah, Silverstone Racing Club on the way out surprised us all with tickets to the Silverstone Festival later on this year. So absolutely delighted with that. That was actually something I was thinking of buying. So in fact, I don't have to. It's brilliant. Saved a bit of money towards Vegas Day. But yeah, off to the Silverstone Festival. Dad and I are going to go. They've got a Senna tribute there this year. Tickets for Silverstone Festival are available online. So if you want to see some racing cars and the price of the British Grand Prix, which I know is really expensive, is out of your price range, I would highly recommend having a look at Silverstone Festival. Really good value on tickets, really good access, historic cars, lots and lots going on, food, drink, entertainment, some great concerts and things there. So if maybe the Formula One Grand Prix is outside your budget, have a look at the Silverstone Festival and get yourself over to the website and check out the ticket price on that one, because there are some good deals to be had on that one. Then obviously last night, the reason this podcast is being filmed so late in the week is because I travelled down to Williams. So went down to Williams, went to the Experience Centre there, met Nigel Mansell. I mean, wow. For me, Nigel was probably one of the first world champions I kind of appreciated. Now, I followed the sport from a very early age, and I'm not going to give my age away, but by the time Nigel won his championship, I was old enough to realise what Formula One was, what the cars were, and really get into it. And Nigel was a hero of mine. So to meet Nigel Mansell, listen to his stories was brilliant. Williams had amazing hospitality down there. And, to sort of at the end of the night, to go have your photo taken with Nigel in the Williams Heritage Museum in front of that iconic red number 5 was pretty special. And, to have your book signed by him, just have a chat with him was great. And his stories was great about how Formula One's a different world nowadays. He talked about driving with broken bones and talk about how bad the injuries were, so that they could just get in the car and obviously get the sack. So a very different era to what we're used to nowadays. Really interesting take on some of the modern modern day drivers as well and how easy they get it. So talked very much about pit stops, how when he was doing a pit stop, he came in at 180 miles an hour and almost hit someone on the way out at 180, and how now it's like 60 kilometers and that's a snail's pace, and making a bit of fun out the drivers for that one. But really great night. And obviously I'm seeing Nigel again tomorrow at Silverstone Museum, which is another racing club event on that one. So getting out and about this week, feeling it, if I'm honest, in terms of, the care and needs for the kids and doing too many events. So I am struggling a bit with that. We got had a busy week last week with writing a lot, and also it's been busy this week, and also we've had some care needs which have been really quite demanding as well. So definitely feeling it this week. That's probably why I've been a bit quiet on social media. I've tended to just use that time back to make sure that I'm recharging where I can and only bringing news that's breaking news. So a bit like the Pat Symonds one, rather than just trying to get content out there, because it's really important to try and find that balance between the two. And it's been a bit of a struggle over the past week. But hey, it's a new week. We are here. We're heading towards Monaco. And there is much, much, much to be positive about. Now, I know, like I said at the top of the show, this isn't everyone's cup of tea in terms of what a good race is. But for me, it's iconic. It's part of the Triple Crown. It's part of the heritage of Formula One. And growing up, it was certainly a race that I look forward to watching on the calendar. And I also know it's on Dad's bucket list to go and watch live as well. So until we've managed that one, if Formula One could keep it on the calendar, that would be amazing, because I know Dad's really keen to cross off his Monaco bucket list. We didn't manage it this year, which is disappointing, but certainly going to be looking at getting there next year, that's for sure. But that is all I've got for you this week in terms of the podcast. I just want to thank everyone once again for liking, sharing, subscribing, all of those bits. Really appreciate it. If you haven't already, please drop me a follow, drop me a like on whatever option this platform gives you that you listen to this to. And with that in mind, I will stop talking. I will see you after the Monaco Grand Prix. Like I said, I am back live with Adam and Rob over on Falamp YouTube channel 1 hour before qualifying on Saturday. So head on over to that one. If you're not a fantasy Formula One player, that's okay, because you'll get all of the latest in terms of what's going on with the cars and the teams anyway. So even if you're not a fantasy Formula One player, head on over there so you can find out the most up to date in terms of what's going on, and also just drop a hi in the comments and come say hi to some fellow like-minded Formula One fans right before qualifying as you settle down for it. But without further ado, catch you next week. Have a good one.